These are the 5 reasons you shouldn't back Star Trek Ascendancy. We have a new collector's edition dropping from Gale Force 9, and I am here to tell you why you're not allowed to get yourself a little treat. If you are new to the channel, this is a series I do whenever a campaign, a board game campaign, reaches over $1 million, I try to put your excitement to the test. I think with all these things, there's some degree of hype, there's some degree of marketing, and there's a lot of excitement surrounding these campaigns, and I want to make sure that you, the consumer, are making an informed and acceptable choice that you will love for the rest of your days. I still have to keep making that statement at the beginning for all of those lovely people on the internet who inevitably didn't listen. But you listened, and you are listening, and you're considering getting the game, and that is a very good thing. This consideration, thinking through your choices, and not impulse buying, as it's so easy to do when you're having a bad day, a good day, an angry day, a sad day, and all the other emotions that us true Vulcans don't have to worry about. But in the hope that I can take out at least one nightly self-spanking for being a naughty bad boy out of the rotation, I just want one night's rest. I'm going to talk about what is exciting about this game first. And I went into Star Trek Ascendancy with zero information about this game. I've been thinking about this game the entire day. I knew that it would cross the $1 million US bar, and I thought, okay, well, this has reached its goal in 6 minutes. Clearly the fervor for this game is at an all-time high, and I kind of assumed that it would be like Gale Force 9's other larger campaign game that I did one of these on, Firefly, the Firefly Big Box. And it isn't. This one actually looks like a fun game. And that makes my job a lot harder. And I suddenly was incited by my Trekkie fandom and the desire of, do I dare add a giant Star Trek game to my collection? Wookiees and all? Now that I've triggered you, let's get into the reasons why I'm excited. You know, I shouldn't have said that. You know, from here on out, we're only making Star Wars references in the hopes that people skip the part of the premise of this series, and I'll just timestamp it here as what I'm excited about, so people missed it. But you who are watching the video know really what's up. All right, let's see what these Jedi are up to. There's a lot about this game which excites me. I through sections of the rule book, I wanted to see the updated rules, and I started with watching the 2 RTFM videos. There's 2 RTFM videos on YouTube, which go through in detail all of the rules for how to play the base game and all of the expansions. I wanted, because this is putting forward, hey, you are getting all the expansion content, I wanted to see what sort of impact does that have on the game. And looking into the mechanics forward of the game, I actually have been pretty interested in this. I think this idea of the space exploration is really neat, that you roll a dice to see how far away the next system is, that you can go into that system. If it's a friendly system, you don't have to roll a check for it, but it might be an anomaly, and you have to see if your shields can withstand the damage of the anomaly, or your ship will blow up. I think that's really cool. I think the exploration aspect is really cool. I like the concept of getting all of these different techs that you can slowly research over the course of the game. I like the idea that in this new version, they are adding an automa deck for each one of the 12 different civilizations, the 12 different asymmetric factions, which seem neat. I love that the Ferengi, in the Ferengi expansion, they don't have culture, which Shay in the RTFM video was like, which makes sense considering they mandated all their women to be naked all the time. I think that's very funny. I think the storage actually looks somewhat decent in their breakdowns of how everything is stored. I wasn't sure because it's got these big 2 giant boxes, but I do like that that one of the boxes is just all of the races. I think that's really good. And then it looks like you have some removable trays for other things, which feels valuable when a lot of the components are going to be based around whatever race or civilization you are. I'm not quite sure about having all the planets at the bottom. Looks like you're going to have to take out every single thing, every single item in that other box. And so maybe that'll be a bit fiddly and take up a lot of the table, but it's going to take up a lot of the table anyway because it is an expanding map that you discover over the course of time. I even love aspects of when you're taking over somebody else's system, you can take it over with diplomacy or you can take it over with war, and if you have a really good roll on the war aspect, you just take it over completely. You don't destroy it, but you get to replace it with one of your own. I think having having those sorts of highs with dice rolls is also a great thing to have, a great option to have. The Borg expansion seems fine. It seems kind of necessary if you're playing more cooperatively or team-based or solo, to have an ever-approaching enemy. I like the trade agreements that I've seen in a few other games. A lot of 4X games, I think, have trade agreements, but you exchange things between people and that you get a consistent income and they're no good to you. They just exist as points of negotiation. I think that's pretty neat. And I do like this as a base game. I think the base game seemed really neat. You start as the Federation, the Romulans, or the Klingons. I think Sebulba was a Klingon, and it's like Watto always says, bet on the Klingons, they always win. But I think thematically, the interest of those three factions being the base starting factions seems neat. They seem like the least interesting factions, but I do like that the Federation can't militarily take over planets. I think that's really neat. I think that's really cool. That feels very thematic. And so all in all, a lot about this and a lot of the interweaving parts of the game have gotten me really intrigued, quite intrigued and quite piqued in a way that a lot of million-dollar campaigns don't often do for me. I find with these campaigns, well, Massive Darkness excluded because it's one of my favorite games of all time, I find with these big campaigns it's easier for me to go like, seen it, seen it. And in a way I have seen a lot of these elements, but I think how they've implemented them seems interesting, and the changes feel like they might be addressing some feedback that I've also looked into over the course of this day's worth of research that I'm attempting to distill for you all out of the kindness of my heart. And so, yeah, in terms of a big old space 4X game with a Star Trek theme on it, it seems decent. Definitely seems decent, but is it worth the $725 price point that it is asking of you for this deluxe all-in that 1,000 people have pledged? But what is nice is that a lot of people, the majority of the people, are just in for this new expansion, this Final Frontier expansion. It just adds in 3 new fleets, and it gives you this big box storage. And that indicates to me that there are a lot of existing Star Trek Ascendancy players who want this additional content and want this additional storage solution. And for those players, I don't think this video is necessarily for you. I think you know what you want. You're getting specifically an expansion, and that's it. But I think for a lot of the other players, perhaps those of you who are just going in blind to the Final Frontier All-In Collection, the deluxeified version, perhaps this can serve as a litmus test to if this game is going to be right for you. So let's get into the reasons. Not to mention, I'm going to give you a bonus reason number 6, that the order, the priority order of dropping down things on a planet go production, research, and then culture last. And if you want to have an uncultured experience, well then get this game, you uncultured swine. But I know that you are a person of culture who's watching this and certainly wouldn't want that whatsoever. If you'd like to be a person of culture, well, why don't you play a game that prioritizes putting culture first, like everyone on Coruscant. So reason number 6 aside, we're going to get into the 5 reasons you shouldn't back this game right now. It is so surprising that there isn't a smaller disparity between those who want the star bases and dice versus those who don't. An extra $150 seems like a lot to pay for some extra star bases and some extra dice. Like you're paying $150, $145 for some extra star bases, which there are tokens for, and you can only have 3 anyway, and it's indicated by your fleet size. And custom dice that you could probably find some colored dice at a much cheaper cost. It's to you that I guess I'm putting forward, have you thought about this at all, or have you just gone for the largest pledge? So let's think about it. And reason number 5 comes in at this incredibly large player count, the 1 to 12 player count. Reason number 5 being, are you really gonna play this at 12 players? The answer is no. I can tell you that right now. The answer is no. You don't even know 12 people who like Star Trek Ascendancy enough to play it at 12 players. You don't. You will never find these people. They might exist, and if they do exist, well, they already have kit bashed this game together and they've tried it out themselves. But you as a new buyer don't have these people. And so I do want to talk about the player count a bit in terms of what I have gleaned from my day of looking into the game, especially marking that it started out as this 3-player experience. It is a 3-player game specifically, and so there's a few considerations to add in once you add in more players. 1, table space. There's going to be less space on the table where you are going to be able to extend your federations. 2, the idea of a team mode. Once you get to 4 players and above, the option, was included in the Dominion War expansion, is to have a big Dominion War between 2 factions. Seems like probably the better way to play once you get above numbers. So if you're thinking about having just an all free-for-all 12-player StarCraft fest, for my money, I think the Dominion War looks a lot more interesting because of some of the specific rules. Like whenever you control an enemy's area, you are not exterminated from the game, you are subjugated by them. And so by being subjugated, you have a chance to get back into the game, whereas if you're playing in a free-for-all, then there's player elimination. If you're eliminated in a 12-player game, well, you just go home, I guess. I think there is something that would be wild to play this at 12 players, and I also feel like it is not designed to play it at 12 players. I find whenever games add in team modes, which I think this one looks decently fun when you add in that element to it, you lose some of the core aspects of the game. We're doing a 6-player, best at 6-player deathmatch over in the Discord right now. And there was the idea of Dune Imperium Uprising that got put forward. And often, but in talking about Dune Imperium Uprising, the idea of taking a 4-player game and making it a 6-player game, you lose something in that expansion, right? And I think you do lose something here as well. Putting the 1 to 12 players, I think, is more of a gimmick, more of an extension to make it seem like you will have the opportunity to play this more than you actually will want to. We can see this is sitting at number 10 on the BGG hotness. People are definitely searching for this. But if you go to the BGG page, I think we really need to kind of update this recommendation of more than 3, more than 3, more than 3 generally means 4, right? They're kind of putting this forward actually in the new version as you should play this with 4 players. They're saying if you're playing it with less than that, you can add NPCs to get you up to that 4-player. And I think a little bit of that has to do with, again, some new updates to the rules, one of them being how you start your exploration and expansion, but we'll talk about that in another point. That should be enough about player count. You know what I mean. It's not a 12-player game. You want to think about what you'll actually play it with, who the optimal player count is for, and don't get suckered into these kind of grand aspirations to convince you to take that extra step to pull the trigger. Now, reason number 4 is one that I'm still going to talk about because I'll give you an alternate reason number 4 that's not gameplay related, because I wanted to do all of these to be gameplay related. I sometimes throw in some non-gameplay related elements, but I think we're gonna go back and forth a little bit on this. One of the reasons I came up with this reason, and it may not be as prevalent or impactful now, is because of the rules changes. I think they have streamlined some rules, and one of those things had to do with the research action, the upgrades, the advancements that you're dealing with. And so it's that the tech feels really low. And I was vindicated by this thought when I was reading through some of and all of the reviews on Board Game Geek, especially this one, which is from a person who gives it a 10 out of 10, who loves this game so much, but then also emphasizes its flaws. I think it's a wonderful way to experience this game, to hear somebody who is obsessed with it, who recognizes its flaws, says, I don't care about these flaws, but these flaws might be relevant to you. And that's kind of exactly the spirit of this series as well. And they sort of isolated one thing that I also flagged as an issue as well, just from my reading of the rules and as a potential issue, and that's the idea of projects. And developing projects is almost always to your disadvantage. We've come to realize that in the last year. When I'm my winning streak with the Andorians, I did not develop any projects. Instead, I put all the research into weapons and upgrading first. I think the Andorians are one who, they're the proud Andorians, and so they want to tech up. They get a boost if they have better shields and better weapons than everybody else. They're like, yeah, our shields and weapons are the best, you're right, which I think is very funny. The reason is simple. In case of invasions, you do not lose uncompleted projects and the valuable research tokens on them. If you have the Dominion as an opponent, they can use your completed projects against you. Against the Borg, shields are useless. Those 3 points make weapon upgrades the single most important target for your research token. The reason for that is the simple scoring system, which doesn't honor spending research on project. The counter of my 4-week Andorian winning streak was, instead of developing 3 projects each game, and no one in my group rarely develops more than 1 project anymore. Often even none at all, because the fear of the power's rival weapon upgrades do not leave room for projects. And so the idea that these projects are too slow, right? That's what I read into it, that the projects are too slow. Part of the mechanics of the game is that for a command token, one of your action tokens, you can give out a research to each one of your projects, but you can only do them one at a time. And so that takes 4 actions to upgrade like a level 4 tech. And you're doing that over the course of a game. Also in that same review, they said an experienced game will last you sort of 8 to 10 rounds or 5 to 7 rounds at a lower player count and then a larger player count. Oh yeah, if they're playing with house rules as well, because they talked about some house rules. Really good, really nice review for a 10 out of 10 review from RW42. Highly recommend checking that out too if you're looking into the game. That's reason number 4.5. But looking into these rules and these rules changes, and it's really nice that they have the new rule book that you can check out as well, and they have an update that helps detail these things, which we're going to spend a little bit more time on. And so this is talked about in there as one of the big changes in the command phase is the ability to research advancements as a single command. That might make the tech and the research more viable, but I'm not convinced by that viability. I think my point here is if you really love tech and upgrading your tech and you love that as part of your 4X experience, there are no tech trees for this game. You have your 1 asymmetric ability, and then you have these randomly drawn cards that you then have to painstakingly research in order that they might be valuable, right? The emphasis on tech here is not the emphasis. And if you like big tech in your games, this game isn't for you. And I think that point still holds. I think it is a little bit easier to do that tech with the updates that they have taken, but just keep in mind, what do you like from your 4X games? What do you like from your games in general? What are you expecting for this? And how are you expecting that flow of the game to go? It's not about that. It's about expanding, and it's about a race to crush your opponents into dust or to develop the most culture. I don't even think I need to give you my other one, but I'll give it to you later. I'll bundle it in with number 1 because it's sort of a non-gameplay thing. The other thing that I want to talk about is reason number 3 is the idea of this measurement movement. So measurement movement is a mechanism that is primarily used in war games. And what it is you have every unit and they can move a certain distance, and that's it. This doesn't incorporate that, but it gives me some vibes of that. Your starting planets in the first edition had to start 18 inches away from each other. That's just how they started. And then whenever you explore, you roll a dice that determines the length of your star highway, let's call it, to another system. I thought this aspect was really neat. I think this was a really cool aspect. There's all these rules to do with these in terms of they can shift around. As long as they're only attached to one spot, you can sort of orient them to shift them closer to another star system and then like create another link in order to connect to that star system, which then makes you have first contact, which then there's a bunch of rules in play in terms of like now you bid for turn order, because if you don't have contact with anybody, then whatever you do doesn't matter. You can just do everything simultaneously. They have also changed this in the new edition. So instead of starting with 1 planet and 3 resource nodes, you know, the production, the research, and the culture, that's how you get your resources, you start with 4 planets, and 8 random resource nodes. They sort of have jump-started the game, and I think that's probably a good thing, but I think you also lose something in this new twist. It's an interesting conundrum, right, to put forward, and they say like that it's an optional rule, you don't have to include it, and again, it's your game, you can play it however you want. All rules are optional rules in a sense. I mean, not if you want to play by the designer's rules, but if you wanted to, you could remove any rule you want, right? Like that's a kind of a non-issue. I think a lot of us like to follow the rules by the letter, and so then we'll gravitate towards doing it in a certain way. And so what this indicates to me is that the initial stages were not fulfilling enough, right? They were too much of the same. Everybody did the same thing. Those decisions of how to lay out the map weren't impactful enough. And so they've just done away with that. But with that, they have also done away with the idea of really movement in general. There used to be a whole system where you'd move things off to the side, and you'd be in warp, and you'd let those warp tokens build up over the course of the day or the rounds, and then you could jump to a number of spaces away based around your warp, and then your other impulse was like a method of two, and so you could slowly crawl along, and therefore these superhighways actually had some strategic significance because it would take you longer to reach some planets and some systems than others. And now they've kind of removed that all entirely, and they say, you just go to the next one. An impulse is just from one system to another. So it just makes it simple, easy, but I think you're going to lose a little bit of the potential tactical excitement that could come from this game. This idea that this game starts out with nothing, that you are going to expand over the course of the game, that you're going to explore the galaxy. I think you lose a little bit of that exploration in the time factor and in the ease of getting around the solar system. And that might be a positive for you, that might be a negative for you, but it's just worth flagging that exists as something that's out there. For me, I don't know if it's a positive or a negative, because I think that's one of the aspects where I thought, wow, this is cool. Like, this feels, I think that was one of the things where I was like, yeah, this makes it feel a little bit more unique. This really makes that exploration aspect feel a bit unique. Not only are we just, we're not just flipping hex tiles that are next to each other, we have variable distances as well. And so losing that and realizing that wasn't as big or as much of a selling point as I wanted it to be, I figured that made it a candidate for this list, because essentially they're just saying, hey, we're going to make it really easy to be connected. And in fact, you start connected to everybody else as well. They say connect to the player on your right. And if everybody does that, well, that will make a circle. And so the opportunity for interesting strategic placements of manipulating the map kind of gone out the window in that aspect for me. A little bit, and that dampens my enthusiasm, seeing that those initial things were obviously too fiddly to keep around, not as streamlined, and that they've been done away with, probably for the benefit of the game, but for the lessening of my excitement, I guess. Right movement, all movement is now system to system. It's just simpler from the previous system, and I agree, sometimes simple is better, but I kind of enjoyed that idea of complexity. And number two is, I mean, still sitting, it's at a 3.18 as the weight of the game, and so maybe that would drop it down to, with this simplification of it, I imagine this would drop down to below 3, which might be a positive or a negative for whoever you're talking. But reason number two is the idea of you not enjoying stat checks. So a stat check is simple. There's a number, you roll the dice, you see if you hit it. But a lot of this game will still come down to those dice rolls. And that also might be good. A lot of 4X games have this. You're going to just chuck a whole bunch of dice at an opponent. You compare how many hits to how many misses. In this, the system is, hey, I'm firing at you with my lasers. There is a stat on my board where I can upgrade my weapons. You can see the upgrade cost to boom, 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 boom. It hits on a roll of 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, right? Oh, but now I have also upgraded my shields, which increase the difficulties. You're hitting on a 2? Well, my shields are at 2, so you're hitting on a 4, right? It's a very simple system of comparing and contrasting. Say, hey, what do I need to hit you? Okay, I need to hit a 4. Great, I'll check a bunch of dice and see if I hit a 4. Every ship rolls a single dice. You want to assemble dice into fleets. You run around, try to bombard each other. Oh, I'm bombarding your planet. I still have to hit on a 4. That's fine, right? Oh, you're going to attack back. I take some casualties. Okay. Like I said, in the excitement factor, I like that there are stakes here where if I roll only successes, I get to take you out completely, right? If I roll so many successes versus your not successes, I can just replace you. I think that's a very exciting element, and I think dice rolling adds in that excitement, right? You're shaking them up. You hope that the thing happens. You can get a bad roll or you can get a good roll. But I think a lot of the meaningful decisions, or because battles are so key to victory, one of the 2 victory conditions is take over the other 2 home planets, or take over 2 home planets if you're playing with multiple people, or if you're a team battle, take over all of the opposing team's planets or half of the opposing team's planets, and then activate the second win condition, which is have 5 ascendancy tokens, which you get by getting a culture. But I also don't think that it's necessarily doing anything more innovative than stat check. You know, even when you enter into that system, it's like, hey, oh, now roll the dice. Did you hit it? Did you not? Or have your shields blown you up? Have they held? Right? There's a lot of those instances of this attack is just going to be out muscling your opponents. And that's fine, but it's a particular style of game, right? And so you need to know that your combat decisions will come down to that, will come down to, do I have the most numbers? Have I rolled correctly on the dice? Has anything mitigated my dice rolls? Sometimes fleets can do that. I don't know how much that mitigation exists, but it doesn't seem like it's a huge amount, especially because if you mitigate one way and then you roll it and you already used that mitigation, you can't reuse the mitigation, right? It's like a one-time thing for a lot of them. Like we saw in that other review, he said, yeah, my strategy is get big old lasers. That's it. Get big lasers, shooty, take over your opponent, right? But while this can be fun, for me, I find that this sometimes makes games a little bit more stale. Right? It doesn't necessarily have the staying power in my personal collection, these style of games, as other things. Other things that use more hand management or more deterministic things, or some wide swings of tech being able to really jack up your attack power, right? That you really have invested in your military might over the course of time. And I guess that's what this is, but it's just really investing it in only one specific way. So I think it's fine. I just think it's worth thinking about how often do you engage with that mechanism in your games, and how often do you find yourself getting a little bit tired of it? Because for me, sometimes I get tired of it. Sometimes I just want to check dice. That's great. But if I'm spending all this money on this game, I want this game to be able to last for a long time. And my worry with this combat system is it's one that I'm not particularly excited about, and so won't be as interested in engaging with once the shiny of it all has kind of worn off. I'll play it three, four times, you know, try out all the different factions, see what they do. I'll be like, that's cool. And then what? Like, does the game's core mechanisms have that staying power for it to be pulled out again and again? Maybe it doesn't need to. Maybe the theme will do its job. Maybe the other elements will be interesting enough to engage with. But for me, this is a larger point, and it is something that I found myself going about. And when you're spending $750 Canadian plus shipping, it's probably $850 on this game. I don't want any aspect to be something where I go, you know, I really don't. So then finally we get to number one, which is sort of a reality check, as I always try to make these things part of it. And so part of it will be, well, part one, why are you getting everything? Do you need to get everything? Can you find Star Trek Ascendancy, the base game, which was $100 Canadian at my local store? Can you find it? I know it's probably a little bit out of print right now, and this will help it get into circulation, but do you even like it enough to get everything? There is sort of a perverse quality in crowdfunding where we feel the need to always have to get everything. And I think that's a horrible mindset. And if you are still in that mindset, that's okay. But just like check yourself. Like, when was the last time you used everything in a game? Come on. But that's not the real number one. The real number one really has to do with 4X games in general. And the reason number one is that you don't have time to enjoy the 4X games that you already own. So a lot of people who I know, I'm not one of them, really enjoy Twilight Imperium. Twilight Imperium is this sort of all-day affair that takes a lot of scheduling, it takes a lot of players to make cook, right? And it's something that you want to play. Even our favorite 10 out of 10 reviewer, RW42, says that 3 to 4 players, even after 4 years, 3 to 4 hours. It takes them 3 to 4 hours time in that 3 to 4 players. So it really does hit with this hour per player, but especially once you've gotten experienced players going. You know, you're in for the evening, you're in for a long event. This is something you will have to plan. And I also find that with fans of this genre, they tend to go out and try to get more of this genre. But I think with 4X games in particular, there's such a vibe, at least to me, that when I want to play them, and they require such effort to coordinate, that when I want to play them, I already have games in my collection that I'm not doing that for. So one of my probably my favorite 4X game ever, definitely, is a game that killed Twilight Imperium. I love talking about it whenever I talk about 4X games. It's a game called Galactic Era. I have this as a review. I gave it a very favorable review. It got like my best of the year at the beginning of the year. I think this game is exceptional. I think it's so good. I love it to death. Last time I played it was, I don't know, a year and a half ago. Because again, it takes that 3 to 4 to 6 hours to play. It caps at 6 players, and so it shines at 6 players. Well, it can play pretty well at 3 as well. But like, it's a big, epic space experience. 18 different races that you can try the good side and the bad side of. And the last time I played it was like a year and a half ago. Is this ever leaving my collection? No. Do I love this game to death? Yes. Am I excited for when I play it again? For sure. But I have to ask myself, okay, like, even as I'm getting really, like, I was getting pretty swept up with Star Trek Ascendancy, and I really have to ask myself, I was like, yeah, because I was like, dang, am I getting into this? Or even worse, dang, am I going to tempt my friend Zach to get into this so that I don't have to think about it and he can just get it? I'm like, I can probably convince him. He's pretty susceptible. He loves the Jedi. And space is his favorite genre. And so, like, I was really legitimately thinking of this. I was like, dang, like, this could be really cool. And then I was reading through the rules, and I was like, all right, it does seem really neat. It's not going to be better than Galactic Era, but I think it's going to be a good time. And that made me stop, and I was like, you know what? It's not going to be better than Galactic Era. And I still don't have the time to organize those types of experiences. Or if I am organizing those types of experiences, I'm also organizing it for all the other large, like, time games that I want. Like, I put 4X on the side because it's not necessarily like my favorite genre. But like, maybe I want to play Rising Sun too. You know, maybe I want to play this other big epic game. Maybe we want to play Dune. We would take that time to organize a Dune night. And so having these other competing factors of games that I actively love, I guess Dune is a 4X game, and I have it higher on my list than Galactic Era. I don't know, Galactic Era is really good. I might like it. No, I like Dune more because of the asymmetry and because of the diplomacy that can happen. Galactic Era is just like solid mechanically, but Dune with the right people can really grow and flourish. But I had to think to myself, I was like, you know what? As cool as this game looks, am I going to get the value out of it? Or is it going to be a thing that sits on the shelf? And I think this might be alleviated by the solo aspect of it all. The fact that you can play this at solo and having NPCs like roaming around, I think that might be a huge selling point for people, and likely is a large selling point for people who are able to play this game solo. I don't play a lot of games solo, so it's never really a consideration for me, but I think it's worth analyzing your own game playing behavior. You can look in your stats, your tracking app, and you can see when the last time was that you played something of that size in that space genre, and think about if Star Trek Ascendancy was vying for that, as it should be, at that $725 price plus shipping. Yes, okay, fine, it's $500. It's a lot of money. Even if your dollar isn't horrible, it's a lot of money. I think it is worth considering and really weighing up against what do you play right now versus what are you going to play in a year and a half when you have even less time, because you got that promotion. Congratulations. Yeah, I know. I'm very happy for you. You do have less time to play games now, though. But you do have more money, and that's how the world goes round. Anyway, those are my 5 reasons you shouldn't back Star Trek Ascendancy. By all accounts, I think it looks like quite a neat game. I imagine this one will be pretty high up on my list when I do the year-end reveal. Every year, at the end of the year, I like to do a list ranking the $1 million campaigns that have funded, and I like to see how their hype held up for me, and what things I was close to backing. I think the gameplay seems good. I think there are flaws from the 2016 style of design, or not necessarily flaws, but, detractors for me personally. I don't think you need to get everything, and I think it's a shame that they are kind of making you get everything, or that your base entry here is still the 2 big boxes, right? This is why people aren't buying the original game, the original Civilization, and the new stuff, because they know they're going to just have a bunch of empty space in the boxes, and it's going to feel bad, and it's going to be hard to get down the line. It's just going to be annoying. Like, these are put forward as legitimate options, and even still, like, the cost for this has now triples over what it was in store, over tripled, And so to even go in at just that base level, which I was considering, it's not really worth it, especially for the amount of space that it's going to take up on your shelf. But yeah, I think it is. I think it's good. I think it's probably going to be fun. But for that price, it needs to be better than good, right? For that price, you need to be tearing off your clothes and streaking through the streets, which is how I've always envisioned you. And I can't stop envisioning it. Just consistently. Awake, asleep. It's how I've always hoped to see you when I'm awake and when I'm asleep, to be clear. I was talking about me, okay? You can't be streaking when you're asleep. I don't want you. What sort of night terrors are you going through? Or you're running? It's like a Ferengi's Freddy Krueger. That's probably what it is. I hope you found this video helpful. I kind of just shouted game terminology at you, and if all that didn't make sense, well, you also haven't done enough research into the game to warrant purchasing it. Now, have ya? So that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Again, drop your reasons down below. I always like these videos because you can drop points for and against, and anybody who's considering can go down and read the comments and read the insightful commentary of anyone who agrees with me and the horrid, idiotic commentary of anyone who doesn't. My name is Chris George. I don't have a catchphrase. I live long and prosper. I was paid to say that by Big Vulcan. I can't wait for the Wookiee faction and the Clone Wars faction, and the Death Sticks faction. Those are my 3 favorite new factions. They're the secret tier. It's a secret tier. You just gotta, you pledge $1,000, you can get them.